what they've always been, uncertain. But this is so like, clearly, the uncertainty is so absolutely clear. One moment, please. I want to make sure we've got everybody muted. There we go. I think, Heather, main thing is just make sure on mind body, because they don't have a streamlined process of people being muted when they sign on. So thank you. It's like little things. Like we've been, our Master's Path program. We have a residential that we do in Austin, and I think in talking to them and then other people about things in the future, and you kind of get answers like, I don't know. It's like, why don't we wait and see? We're trying to plan a little family thing for the summer, a little road trip for the family for the summer. But once we got on and we started looking at things, I mean, even state parks, we were figuring we'd drive to New Mexico, and you can see in there where they say, they will be phase reopening at this time, but when you try to reserve anything, you can't reserve it. They're not making it available yet. So nobody really knows what's happening. And so, how incredibly appropriate a topic, because we so often try to gather information so that we have all the answers so that we make the best decision. But I mean, even so-called answers that we might get, in our information gathering process, I mean, really, how certain is it, at all, really? And of course, we spoke about how, so many of us spent time in our lives, dealing with destination addiction. And that was a real kind of big topic in our last time, was destination addiction, and how that is like, once I'm done with this, then we'll do that. And then there's this whole space, right in the middle that gets forgotten. And that's the space that we refer to as a transition. And transition is defined as a process of change. So I think that whenever we think of the idea of uncertainty or of change, the word transition is like the verb form of it. Change is more this static form that we think, well, one day when things change. But I mean, really, isn't everything always in transition? Have you ever had an experience where you found out a very difficult truth from someone? Maybe if someone betrayed you in your life, or, maybe there was something happening at work or anywhere, and then you find out the truth about it, and it's something that's maybe been happening for, several years, 1 year, or maybe it happened a year ago and you just found out about it. I've always been really fascinated about seeing myself get emotional, feel upset when I find out a truth about something that had already happened. It's like, this is so weird, isn't it? Like, but I'm upset about it now. I don't know. I just find that really fascinating when we find ourselves really upset about things that, we find out it's been happening. And so that really kind of takes me, I think, kind of a little bit from where we were last week, talking about destination addiction, what transition is, how it affects us. Several people shared about how much time they spent in their lives, going to school, and waiting until they got their bachelor's. Then once they got their master's, then once they got their PhD, or once they got their doctorate, MD or whatever, then everything will be okay. Then I'm going to be ready to go. Then my life is ready to happen. A lot of people now are thinking, well, once this COVID thing is over, then and it's like, well, really, it needs to be happening now. Now is the time. Now is the time. And we want to really take a good look at the destination addiction. Once I do this, then I'll do that thing. And of course, doing the work that I do, we hear that a lot. People come in and they're like, well, once I get my life all straight, then I'm going to get myself on track. Then I'm going to get well. Then I'm going to, and you know, the thing is that all that really is that the person gets stronger at putting it off, right? It's like whatever you practice is what you manifest. If I practice continually putting something off until, then I get really good at it. And so we really want to pay great attention to kind of what comes along with this idea of transition, what we're really dealing with now as a society, and that what we practice is what we become. And, you know, and the idea of practice being is that we have some consistent repetition of something, and if we do something enough, if we do it over and over again, that's who we'll be, that's what we'll become. Thank you guys so much on Facebook Live for making comments and letting me know you're there. I appreciate it. So tonight I want to really kind of delve into the idea of our perception and really how our perceptions shape everything. There's some ideas that I've put here, and one of the very first things that I learned whenever I started training in yoga, because I don't know if many of you are aware, but I started with the yoga psychology, philosophy, and Ayurveda, and I didn't really know much about the physical practice at all until I was pretty deep into it. And one of the very first things that I heard early on is that our perception and how our world looks is all going to be determined by, do we see the world from the inside out or from the outside in? Do we have a well-established internal reference point, or do we have a well-established external referencing point? In other words, do I determine, is my fate, is my destiny every day determined by what's going on with other people out in the world, by the weather, you know, by the economy, by my own personal economy? You know, how is my fate, how is my life determined? And the majority of people are external referencers. And, you know, early on in our life, we start as an external referencer, and our first reference point is our mommy. And, you know, this will be this may be a 21-day discussion, but, you know, based on, you know, our level of confidence and being able to depend on mommy and all of those sorts of things can really directly affect how we view the world, you know, and whether or not we eventually grow into having a more, a greater sense of referencing the world from the inside out. So the first real key on how we affect transition, it's not even just how we respond to transition, but how we affect transition. Because make no mistake about it, when transition is occurring, that's when evolution happens. And in the space of transition, not when something's in a set point here or there. That's why, you know, many of you Rasikas, if you're going through a very difficult time, I'll say, man, this is the time when the veil is the thinnest between coming from this world of the repetitive patterns that I do over and over again to cultivating a new possibility, new potential, because it's like one of those moments where, do I go with the group, you know, off into, you know, do I take this point, or do I go onto the road less traveled? Which one am I going to take? And it really happens in the moment of transition. We talked last week about stability and stable and unstable. And so we live our lives. Really, if we're really living, we are living in a state of instability. If we're really living. Because if I'm simply standing still, right? If I'm stuck and I'm standing still, well, I don't have to worry. I probably won't become unstable, of course, until the earth rocks me, you know, and I'm forced to. But it's not until I lift up my foot and I decide to take a step that in that transition of one step to the other, man, that is the sweet spot. That's it, baby. That's the place right there. When I start to lift up my foot, you know, how is that step going to process? Am I going to roll for my toes? Do I activate my calf muscles, stimulate my venous blood return, and then land so light on my feet like I look like I am ready to go and ready for the next step? Right? It's in that spot that I lift that up. And I mean, that's the sacred place. I love to dwell in that space. That's the place where we really want to land. That's really the space, if you've taken Nada Yoga with Padma Shakti, it's the space between the notes that makes the music. How that space is held and how it's approached by the musician determines, is this genius, absolute greatness, or is this like good music? Okay, yeah, it's all right. It's the space and the transition that gives the life, the vibe to everything. And so if we view the world, if we view transition, we're an external referencing person, then everybody else is always defining, and we are really going to suffer from destination addiction. I don't believe, now I'm going to make a statement right now that don't know that I've made before or I've even thought through, but just kind of intelligence tells me that if I'm living as an external referencer, transition's probably going to eat my lunch, because if I'm looking to everybody else on how this transition is going to go, then it's going to be impossible for me to be deliberate. Because if I'm trying to be deliberate, but I'm relying on you, that's going to work. So we've got to cultivate that internal referencing point. The internal reference point really is the space where our thought world, the way we, talk to ourselves, our mental emotional nature, which is our subtle body, and our physical body, the type of relationship that those three aspects of us have to have must be coherent. Coherency is the name of the game. Our physical body, our emotional nature, and the way we think must be coherent. So in other words, if let's say Allison's right smack dab in front of me. If I looked at Allison and I told Allison, oh, I'm so happy to be here today, but somewhere in my mind, I have had a different conversation, then I'm out of integrity. It's possible for me to ever become truly an internal reference, having an internal reference point. And if I can't have an internal referencing point, I won't be able to be deliberate, and I'll never really know what my truth is. Finding my truth, finding my voice, because then I call them the three fish, if my three fish, my body, my emotions, and the words in my head and the words that come out, if that's not coherent, it's whatever integrity, I'm going to want to lean greatly on the outer world, and that's how babies are. I mean, we come in, we rely, our first reference point is our mother, and then, then the train takes off. So we've been called the most codependent nation on the planet before. And so when we're talking external referencing versus internal referencing is non-codependence. It's truly the capacity of an individual to live cooperatively, to collaborate, to work as a team, to be inspired, and to inspire others. Someone that externally references is always going to be depending on other people to give them approval. As a matter of fact, they may do a lot of nice things for people. It could be the person that does all the cool and nice things for everyone, but deep down is crushed when they don't get the response they want, when they don't feel approved of, when they don't feel, that they were seen, or that there was, that they messed up and they feel just terrible. So our perception to master the potential, the beauty of transition in life. To master that, we must develop and be clear on our perception. And am I now living in a place where I live my life based on what they think? The group, it's called groupthink. And there's also another name called bystander mentality. You know, one of the most painful, I've had so many painful things, of course, happen in human history, but, you know, there are so many things that occur, particularly Nazi Germany, and, you know, that's a classic example because it was happening before everyone's eyes. And groupthink and bystander mentality just started gathering evidence to make it appropriate. An external referencer lives life by gathering evidence to prove what they feel is okay. My daughter asked me the other day in a little bit of frustration, because she's a little bit of an external referencer and gets a little bit frustrated around the whole COVID thing. And we were talking about it, and she said, aggravated with me, and that never happens, you know, and aggravated with me, and she said, so what, do you think you know more than a medical doctor? I said, well, if they're a yoga master and study Ayurveda, it's quite possible, absolutely no, but as far as this is concerned, absolutely. I said, you've got to, you know, I said, it's making a shift from learning to really think for yourself, not just wait to see what the doctor says. Well, if the doctor says it's okay, then I'll. I said, that's got to stop. I said, it doesn't mean we don't want to be informed. Let's hear it. But if I'm an external referencer, I'm always looking to the experts for the end-all, be-all answer instead of saying, wait a minute, you know, what do I think about this? What am I feeling about this? And I can tell you that over time, as you develop your skills at internal referencing, you will generally be right on point, because your heart, the heart center, which is directly connected with the enteric nervous system, it knows. There are there are so many studies in neuroscience now showing how, one particular study is incredible, showing how various images were shown to people, and how very quickly, you know, they'd have a gentle image, say, of a cute little rabbit out in the field, and then a, you know, very disturbing, maybe in a surgical suite or something, you know, image. And they started to be able to see very quickly that before the image was even shown, that their heart rate, they would, for the more stressful ones, they would start having a reaction before the image was shown. We know, guys, we know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Yeah, you can gather a little bit of evidence from the outside world. It's good. You don't want to resist or push anything away. But then when it comes down to it, you know, even the information that I know we've got doctors in here and all, and so I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people that externally reference. But I'm always curious, what is that person's vested interest when they're giving me advice, or they are telling me what's going to be best during this time? I'm not just going to go, oh, yes, 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 absolutely, doc. Oh, sure, yes. I'm going to say, Because when we're talking about groupthink and external referencing, you need to know what their true vested interest in. Am I talking to somebody that just wants to retire and get the heck out of Dodge? Am I talking to somebody that wants me to have this particular infection because what a great study that would be, or how great that would be to work? You want to really develop the capacity to get clear on the vested interest of the people involved. And your heart knows. But again, it takes work. It's a real privilege, I think. It's a real privilege. It's divine. It's a gift from God that we all have. But we have to earn it. You know, it's like we got to work. We got to train this body. You know, we got to train our emotional nature. We got to train our mind and the way that we think. And we've got to develop that stage of coherency. And we want to develop a perception that is internal referencing versus external referencing. Then from there, when we're talking perception, here's something else really important. Are you a pessimist, an optimist, or a realist? Right? Are you a pessimist, an optimist, or a realist? What are you, Phil? You guys, if you're on a laptop or a desktop, you can press the space bar and hold it, and it'll unmute you. What are you, Phil?
I was hoping one of the choices was going to be optimalist.
You're optimist? What are you, Carrie?
Optimalist.
Oh, wait, say that again.
Optimalist.
Optimalist. Optimalist. Okay, got it. Do you what, Carrie? You kind of blanked out there for me.
Realist.
Realist, okay. Who else? Who thinks realist is negative? Right? So being a realist is not negative, but it's not positive either. It's neither. A realist, somebody that lives in the world of reality, doesn't assume that it's going to go downhill fast. And generally, they're not going to assume that, oh, everything's going to turn out for the best. So the idea, becoming a realist, is really being able to see things how they are, how they actually are. Now, understand, though, to be able to experience being optimist, pessimist, or realist, most certainly, if you're an external referencer, you're either an optimist or you're going to be a pessimist. Being able to see things as they actually are, if you're externally referencing, then you're actually really seeing things through everybody else's eyes. You're seeing everything through the expert's eyes. You're seeing everything through, you know, the weatherman's eyes, through your partner's eyes, through your kid's eyes. Being a realist is being able to say, okay, we have a picnic planned this weekend, and there is a major storm coming. It's going to rain. It is not emotionally driven. A realist doesn't live in the place of being emotionally driven, nor is a realist going to follow their attachments or their aversions. And these are very important. And just to remind you guys, some of you that are just coming in, that we're talking about transitions, and this is an add-on from last week, and we're talking about really tonight the theme is perception and the importance of your perception and all the different variables that come into play, because our perceptions feel like reality. But has the only the perception. Did anybody want to say anything around that? People often like to make comments when I get on that. Any thoughts, comments? Okay. So it is good to know you're not going to be able to just, turn yourself from a pessimist to an optimist right away. Optimism is an excellent goal, but it's not a place to land. Optimism is like cutting the pain cycle, right? If your tendency is to really focus on how things are not going to work, how they're probably going to, kind of worst case scenario is going to work out, it's going to be the way it's always been. Any of you in here that have a penchant for pessimism, y'all know the lingo, don't you? You know the sentence stems, right? And an optimist, those sentence stems as well. What I really find is that a pessimist tends to be incredibly attached to the way things are, And this has just been in my experience. This is not some big, statement of truth. But, and noticing that an optimist will tend to have a high level of resistance to how things are. Because as an optimist, it's really easy to sort of pretend that everything is la 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 when it's not. I mean, guys, the truth is that even when we're in a best case scenario, as far as in our generation, as we've known it in our generation, we've still suffered as a species. We've moved so far away from nature. We're not generally, we're not living according to the cycles of the sun and the moon. And, our nature is to follow our survival brain instead of realizing that the survival brain is there meant to support the tribe. That if we feel a threat, that we need to do something to really take care of the tribe. And so even in the best case scenario, in our current generation, we have really been living closer to more of a hell than a heaven. We've created more of a hell than a heaven. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but, that's how it is. And it doesn't mean that, there's not hell within the state, not heaven within the state of hell. But we have a possibility as humankind to be much greater than we actually show up. Much, much greater than we actually show up. I mean, we are designed for divinity. All I do is I just looking at how our brain functions, how our heart functions, the regenerative nature of our cells. That alone just tells us we are designed to be, as a species, much greater than we are. This isn't negative. It's just, it's really how it is, that we are not really as fully where we could be. But we are where we are. And where we are is we all have the potential to love. We all have the potential to grow. We all have the freedom to speak, to think, and to think how we choose. And so with that, I think it's very important for us to all take a really honest look at our perspectives and say, when I see a thing, do I automatically think worst case scenario 80% of the time? You can figure your perception is pessimistic. A realist doesn't go there. If when you hear some sort of news that you don't like, and your automatic go-to is kind of, oh, it's going to all turn out great. Don't worry. We'll just pray about it. Everything will be fine. Oh, and they're going to get better. Don't worry. Everything will be, that kind of thing. They're an optimist, and they're resisting the experience. And the amazing thing is that, the optimist and that resistance can turn to resentment very, very quickly. That's why if you've ever known a really angry optimist, and a lot of times people feel frustrated with optimists because optimists are painting a pretty picture over things. It's like taking pink, shiny wallpaper and putting it over everything and, oh, don't be fine. Well, I know how much fun it is as well, right? They're going to see it from the worst case scenario. It's like, oh, great, here we go. This thing's going to happen again, and, all of these things. But, what if we were able to take pause between what we hear or what we experience and really create space between how we're going to think about it, how we're going to perceive it, and how we're going to act? What if we could really create a space where we could step back and begin to see, really see, and allow things to play out? It doesn't mean one never takes action, but it does mean that it's quite wise to at least sleep on it most of the time. Very seldom, particularly in the abundant society that we live in, do we need to make a decision in the second. The pessimist will make you think you need to make a decision this second, right? And so it's not, there's very seldom this sort of thing that's got to happen. right away. The optimist will have you think, oh, we've got forever. It'll all turn out okay. Everything will be fine. We don't need to make a decision at all. The yogi is meant to become a realist, to be able to see things as they are, to the extent that you're able to see and experience them. Not living from a reactive state, in sort of that urgent fight or flight state, but instead the ability to see. My teacher once told me, we're all on some sort of trajectory, right? We live our lives, and if you repeat the same things often enough, you can create a pretty powerful trajectory. And that trajectory starts carrying you. And if your life is filled with negativity, right, and you're dealing with things from a pessimistic perspective, that's the trajectory that's carrying you. And we've got to build a spiritual dam. And that spiritual dam is often optimism. Optimism is the way we stop the pain cycle. It's a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. It's not the end. It's a means to start seeing things having a greater potential than what we can see in the moment. But ultimately, we train because we want to move to a point that we can be able to really see things as they are, as they really are. And so what that means is that we've got to have the capacity to profoundly affect our state of mind. In yoga psychology, we learn about 5 main states of mind. And the first state of mind is absolute chaos. It's an individual. Probably none of you on here, you probably wouldn't even be able to tune in here if that was you. It's a deeply, deeply disturbed, very tamasic, rajasic state of mind, very dark, deeply disturbed. And even on these, there's a scale, 10 to 1. The next 2 states of mind are where most people start yoga. The next 2 states of mind is there are points of disturbance, deep disturbance, but then you have the capacity to pull yourself out of it. Maybe you have enough, optimism, because that's really what we want to do. We want to come into a bit more of an optimistic place so we can start having more, of those times where we're not as disturbed. But you know as well as I do that over the long term, just simple optimism, because everything doesn't always turn out like rainbows and unicorns. Things aren't always tied up into a neat, happy ending. That's not the experience of humankind. It's not in yoga psychology, the word is lila. Life is the great divine cosmic play. That's not what we came here for, was to everything to be tied up into a nice, neat little happy bow. Some people call that the Cinderella syndrome, right? Things don't happen that way. So the reason that long-term optimism isn't going to work because, like can be very reasonable, very cynical, even say things like, I spent my life, and what did it get me, But to see things as they actually are, that takes a warrior. It's really developing fortitude, courage, and the state of mind, the next state of mind that is very difficult for an individual, it's called mudha. And it's weird because it's kind of like how it sounds when somebody's moody. It's M-U-D-H-A. It's a state of mind for the person that, for the most part, and most people, until they learn otherwise, their emotions are reality. Most human beings see the world through their emotions. They'll even say, let me see how I feel about it. And if I feel happy, if I feel good about it, if I feel peace around it, well, those are all rasas, so they're all emotions. Emotions are not indicators of truth. They're just emotions. Just because, you feel fear or sadness around doing a certain thing, doesn't mean you shouldn't do that thing. Right? Oftentimes we need to step right into what we're most afraid of. We have to, as my husband told somebody one time, they were talking about embarrassment, and he told him, he says, my wife eats embarrassment for breakfast. It's like you got to be able to step right into it. So then that's really what the term Rasa Yoga means. It's mastery of emotions. The term mudha and the state of mind that's mudha is the opposite of mastery of emotions. It means that you are run by your emotions. Your life, your intelligence is guided by emotions. And if you don't feel good about something, or if you're upset, you're not going to follow through. It's not going to happen, or you're going to quit, whatever the case may be. And whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, most of the time, mudha is going to be the leading edge either way, because optimism makes people feel good. So the next state of mind, so the goal is, is to experience a state of mind referred to as ekagraha. Ekagraha is the state of mind that I think of it like this. It's like a global focus. It's the ability to be able to be very present in the moment, and you're able to see things as they are, as they actually are. And you're unmoved by it. Every appearance makes itself known to you, and you're unmoved by appearances. Some of you have heard me say before, I am unmoved by appearances, therefore all appearances move. And I'm quite literal about that. And it is a literal truth. If everything that shows up and it appears to you, if you get pulled one way or the other, then your life, it's just like this. It's going to be more like the turbid waters of a stormy ocean. So ekagraha, that's this sort of panoramic focus, or the ability to see how things are happening, but to stay very clear on what you're on track to do, or what you're on track to be. You're not changing your mind all the time. However, if your mind needs to be changed, it'll change. Something needs to be different, it'll be different. See, in the world of the external referencer, whether or not they're going to change a thing, and a lot of you are leaders of groups at your work. I think we have so many leaders on Facebook, I'm sure Mind Body, and here on Zoom. And I'm sure you've experienced before, maybe going through a process, a project with a group, and you said, this is how it's going to be, and everybody goes, yay! Anybody know what I'm talking about? Right? And everybody's real happy, and they like it, and then boom, it doesn't turn out that way. And you have to say, guess what? We changed our mind. But it's just how it is. Well, somebody that externally references, they make a terrible leader because they don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the ability to make others unhappy for the greater good. Right? An external referencer, an optimist, right? And these are the very people too that you like, that even kind of malicious, liars or anything, but they don't tell the truth about how things are because they want everybody to be happy. They don't want anybody to be mad at them. But a person that's mastered the state of mind of ekagraha, it's not that they don't care, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter to me, but if there's something that needs to be done, I even like the word, it doesn't matter. In other words, you don't make matter out of it. It's like it's not meant to come into form right now. It's like if you're the leader of that group, you're like, I'm the leader of the group. This is what I can see now, and this is how we're going. And if you don't like it, you can certainly have compassion for a person's unhappiness and have empathy. A person in the state of mind of ekagraha, they hold empathy. But empathy doesn't mean that you don't set boundaries. boundaries are incredibly important, an incredibly important place for the yogi, and to set clear boundaries around what's okay and what's not okay given the situation. And yeah, will you be called a know-it-all from time to time? Or like my daughter said, so, she didn't even say it as nice as I say it, if any of you have ever talked to my daughter. You think you know more? I said, well, yeah, I kind of do. I would love it if you'd introduce me to this doctor and they would know more. I would be thrilled about that, and I would want to partner with them, no doubt about it. I would be at their feet, touching their feet, no doubt. So she didn't talk to me until the next morning, you know. And then she texted me, I love you, Mama. I know, a few of you have adult children on here. You know what I'm talking about. I love my baby girls. Y'all know that. And that may be a problem. I see them as my baby girls. So the other thing, too, that we're talking about here around state of mind, many of you that are studying the Yoga Sutras, you've heard of the term Nirodha. The beginning of the Yoga Sutras and yoga psychology, this was actually my very first exposure to yoga. Yoga is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That's my first exposure. Yoga is stilling the thought waves of the mind. Nirodha is that state of the stilling of the waves of the mind. It doesn't mean the mind is empty. It doesn't mean the mind is rigid. It doesn't mean that there's some kind of stuckness. It's like, I think of it like, you know, if you go to the lake, I mean, I love to go to the lake, or go sit out on the bay, you know, when the bay is calm really early in the morning, and it's really calm. However, it still has movement to it. It's really cool. That's the mind, you know, where the mind becomes still, and there's not these waves crashing, but it has this sort of harmonious sway to it. That's very sattvic in nature, or wave-like in nature. And there's these, in the sattvic state of mind is where the mind, it has its high, and it has a gentle low, then a gentle high, and a gentle low. And you have the capacity to see the transition that occurs between the highs and the lows. And through your state of mind, you affect transition. You become deliberate. And transitions, change becomes your friend. Lily said on Facebook Live, I love what she offered. She said she believes this pandemic has brought out the divinity in most of our society. And of course, Lily's beautiful perspective there. Absolutely. I agree. So, nice. Hang on, I was just fixing my Facebook Live, my friends. I did something to it, sorry. Oh, there we go. So, states of mind, perspective, and then finally, a really important part to having needed to see where we're clearly attached to the way things are. You know how you can feel upset when something doesn't go your way? I mean, a realist, a yogi, is going to feel the movement of emotions. But the realist has the ability to go, there's a situation, it's not going my way, I'm very attached to it happening the way I want it to, therefore feeling angry and sad. Something changes things when you're able to see things very clearly. I mean, really, when you're able to see, that's very rare, but when you're really able to see yourself very clearly and what's really happening, when you understand that there's either attachment or resistance happening, you know, then you realize, wait a minute, the way this person is responding, hold on just 1 moment, please. You're about to see what it's like doing Facebook Lives in quarantine. Thanks, babe. So let's see, where was that? Oh, okay. Attachment and resistance. These are the two big of the yogi's life. But the thing is, you know, attachment doesn't necessarily go away, because as a human being, to some degree, you know, a bit of attachment from the human perspective is part of the passion of life, you know, the love of life. But having the clarity that what's really happening here, my pain is occurring because I'm losing something that I was very attached to. Do you see? And it's having the ability to see that. Then the other very clear problem in the yogi's life is living in resistance. Resistance to letting things be how they are, or seeing things how they are. When we're able to really see attachment and resistance as our life experience, when we can really see that and we start to heal that, and we have that space between the stimulus and our response, that's when we start earning the lovely privilege of seeing things as they really are, unencumbered by our attachment, by our resistance, by our moods, right? And by our possible temporary insanity. My teacher always says that as long as you're in a human body, it requires a touch of insanity. The guru just simply knows how to recover quickly. And it is very important to learn how to recover quickly. You know, it's not that we don't fall or we don't grow unstable. I mean, really, if we never fall or we don't experience some momentary experiences of insanity, we are not taking some risks. So, any comments, questions? We have a little bit of time left. That if there's any questions, it's important to share them now.
No, there were two questions. There was some things in the chat that came through.
Okay, great.
The first one was, what about when people say things like, I had a gut feeling or a bad feeling about that, so I didn't do it?
Oh, yeah, I don't usually believe them. But whether I believe them or not doesn't really matter, you know. Again, that's the other beautiful thing about being able to be more in a state of ekagraha, because, you know, if somebody does tell you that, you know, then, you know, you're able to ask them if there's anything more. And of course, it depends on the situation. But if somebody says, well, no, you know, Padma, I didn't do this for that because I had a gut feeling it just wasn't the best thing for me. Well, as far as, you know, gut feelings, you know, unless they've really got their state of mind mastered, then it's not real. I mean, their perception in that moment is real. No doubt about it. Their perception is real. And I must their person. Some of you advanced have often said, you must learn how to respect the illusion. You don't just go shattering people's illusion, you know. And so that's the first thing, you know. But then, of course, you know, what I feel, you know, what my perception is, no matter how much I might understand around states of mind or gut feelings or whatever. I also am a realist and understand that their perception that they had a gut feeling, no matter how inspired by the state of mind of mudha or in and out of disturbance it is their reality, and I do respect it. I may have to set a boundary or two around it, but I will still absolutely respect it. Now, if it's a student, and one of you say to me, oh, Padma, I had a gut feeling, you know, that practice you told me to do, I shouldn't do it. Well, it depends on what stage you are. You know, if you're kind of newer to the practice and you're just kind of into believing your own stuff, then it's like, then you may not be looking for information. You're just looking for me to affirm that situation. And I might say, when you really want to know more about that, please feel free to ask me. You know, so yeah. So most gut feelings are going to be clouded. The term is called Maya, M-A-Y-A. It's going to be clouded. And that's, honestly, that's groupthink, you know, that's most everyone. That's why you yogis, you guys are you're in a world, and you guys know as well as I do, that when you do start to see through Maya and you see all of that, the next stage is really learning how to sustain that vision. What was the other question?
It was from Sashi. She wanted to hear the definition of optimalist from Phil.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Phil. Is Philippe around?
Yes, but you might also hear our neighbor who's playing the recorder.
Oh, okay. Hey, Phil. Shashi has a question for you.
That's a realist with a dose of optimism.
There you go. You got it, Shashi?
You know, like sugar.
I didn't hear that last part.
You know,
Say it again.
realism with a little sugar on top.
I realized a little sugar on top. Got it. It's so nice to see you, Shashi. I love seeing you guys' faces. It was so exciting. We had a master sadhana today. So just so all of you know, it's in the works. We're in transition on when we're going to bring people in for classes. Most probably it'll be a couple weeks. We have started our master sadhanas, though our master's path students. We had our first today, and we were able to do, I think we did a fabulous job. You guys, not, I really didn't do it. You guys did a fabulous job at distancing, and everyone had their masks on, and they didn't practice with a mask on, of course, but they just did a really great job. And for all of you, you know, when it comes time for having classes again, you can feel very confident about being able to come in, but you're also going to want to make sure you book your spot, because they're going to fill up quickly. Our master sadhana filled up very quickly for sure. So definitely make sure you book your spot. Any other questions? Okay, so finally, what I'd like for you to take with you is that, you know, someone that sees the world as it is, as it really is, has the ability, has this superpower of acceptance and allowing. And one of the ways I'd really like for you to be able to take with you, you know, one of the ways that you start to notice if you're getting in the way of acceptance and allowing, and you're living in a state of attachment or resistance, is it really does feel like a struggle. You know, it feels like a tightening in your chest. For some people, the gut feeling they're really having is a tight. There really is a storm of the mind, right? And that storm turns into anxiety and can often lead to depression, right? And then, of course, you know, to a greater degree, even, you know, just addictions, you know, happen, and habits that aren't particularly supportive. That's what happens when you're in my house. You get to hear my dog. That's India. India. We live on a cul-de-sac, and at night, right where we live, it is where everybody, I mean, it's like everybody heads, and we're in this sort of great crossover for walkers. I love it, actually. We have lots of bikers and walkers, and there's always people out there, and I'll be on the balcony, you know, waving and talking to people, and they're used to seeing me out there for fitness evolution or doing my yoga practice. I do get a lot of the people walking by going, namaste, or, you know, other funny stuff. It's kind of cool. But it just makes her like crazy, because she wants to go out. She wants to go play with all the the kiddos out there. So when you notice that life feels like a tug of war, you've got to consider that maybe you need to put your end of the rope down. And I'm not saying that you need to quit or you need to make a massive change. My teacher always says, never quit anything when you're turbid. Don't stop anything when you're turbid. Do not make major decisions when you're turbid. Because he says you're on the death chemicals at that time. It's like you're on drugs. And you should not make decisions when you're turbid. A lot of people, what they call a gut feeling is turbidity. So when you feel that, guys, you just know that there's like a tug of war, and you gotta put the rope down. And you know what I'll say, you gotta do yoga more so that you can be yoga more. And that's all I got. Kristen's on Facebook Live. Hi, Kristen and Becky, Susan. Susan got to see Paul pop in back here to grab my purse. I normally keep my purse out just in case anybody needs in it for any reason. Does anybody else have a purse like that has like all the stuff in it? Alcohol wipes, wallet, keys, all kinds of things in my purse. Okay, so if there's not anything else, let us just take a moment. I'd like to invite you, if you'd like to close your eyes and take your attention to your breathing. Sensing the rise and fall of your breath, and then begin to feel or sense your heart beating. Allow your heartbeat to slow down. Slowing your heartbeat down. Allowing your mind to slow down. May you be at peace. May you be at peace. In the face of the greatest storm, the best of times, the worst of times, may you be at peace. As we acknowledge the presence of all saints, sages, gurus, teachers, and masters, may our minds be wise and clear. May our intention be pure. May our hearts be merciful and loving. Namaste. Thank you guys so much for being here. Your presence here is a vote for these things. Hi, Elise Angela. Namaste to you too. Your presence is a vote here. I see you, Nikki, on Mind Body. We'll be curious. We'll love to hear about your experience there. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you guys for being on Zoom. You'll have just a lovely evening. I look forward to seeing some of you in Master Sadhana. Take care. Namaste.